Live from the Coachella Valley, time for another hour of the desert scene. Art exhibitions to modernism, music festivals to live theater, big screen, little screen, and very little screen. This is the Culture Corner with Bonnie Gilgallen and Brian Mendoza. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And welcome to another version of the Culture Corner, where we talk about all kinds of stuff, movies, theater, music, books, social media, all kinds of stuff. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good.
I know we got tons and tons and tons of news, and you wanted to start with the whole Dr. Seuss controversy.
I would say controversy in a very loose term, because I think that it shouldn't be a controversy at this point, to be honest. But so for those of you who don't know, or you probably have heard of it, we got the facts for you. 6 Dr. Seuss books will no longer be published by the Dr. Seuss Estate, which is a subdivision of Penguin Publishing.
Okay.
The 6 books are, And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, Miss Mick Elliott's Pool, If I Ran the Zoom, Scrambled Egg Super, On Beyond Zebra, and The Cat's Quizner, Are You Smarter Than the Cat in the Hat? And all of these books, for the most part, have been released 30s, 40s, 50s, and only one of them from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the 6 books were no longer published because, according to the Dr. Seuss Estate Enterprise, actually, they felt that the books portray people in ways that are harmful and wrong, and they said that ceasing sales of these books is only part of our commitment and our broader plan to ensure Dr. Seuss's Enterprise catalog represents and supports all communities and families. Now, this is a very touchy subject on the internet right now, because I think a lot of people are having this idea that Dr. Seuss himself is
everything's been canceled. Everything he ever did. Yeah, which is not true.
No, it's certainly not. And I think when we were talking, you even said, it's his own estate, and
they have the right to do whatever they want. It's his stuff. Yeah.
And I definitely agree with that. I think that with these images, they are, I would say, outdated, racist, outdated. And some of the ones that are included would be a very stereotypical image of a Chinese person with yellow skin, like literally yellow skin.
Squinty eyes with chopsticks, yeah.
And the little hat, and, and the line was, and a Chinaman eats with sticks, or something like that. And then there's one of a monkey with African attire, right? And the fact is that a lot of these books aren't even the popular ones. I want to make that clear, is that for me, they're not the good Dr. Seuss books.
B and C list Dr. Seuss books, yeah.
And for me, it's like, I feel like we have this misunderstanding about cancel culture, where I think that, yes, you can critique cancel culture. There is some issues. Like, I do think some people are a little unfairly treated, but I think in this case, the Dr. Seuss company is just saying, you know what? We're kind of just done with these books. And I think part of it is that maybe those books, because they're not so popular, they feel, you know what? Nobody talks about that one. It's not Cat in the Hat. It's not The Lorax.
Grinch Stole Christmas. Yeah, it's not any of those. Yeah.
And for them, they feel that it's time to sort of rebrand Dr. Seuss. And I get that. And and it's not even the first time that a book has been edited or taken off the market for controversial material. Like, there are several instances of authors who choose to make their own corrections. Like, Stephen King had a book called Rage, which was about a school shooter who went around shooting people at his school, and it was like very heavy material. And Stephen King, not Dr. Seuss, Stephen King said that he took that book off the market because he felt that book was way too sympathetic to school shooters. And he said that he felt very bad about writing it, and that for him, he personally does not feel comfortable about that book's presence. And I think the logic is now that, well, would Dr. Seuss be okay with these images now? And I
doubt it.
And the Enterprise said, you know what? I think Dr. Seuss would not want these anymore, and we're just going to move on away from them. And I'm one of those people that I think the writers and estates have every right to take any book off the market.
Of course, it's their stuff. If they have more right than anyone else, yeah.
I certainly believe so. And also, in the case of like Roald Dahl, for example, he wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and he in later publications of that book, he took out a lot of stereotypical elements of the Oompa Loompas. The Oompa Loompas were almost written as black caricatures in the beginning.
See, I didn't know that either. Okay.
And then later republishings changed it up a bit. And to give Roald Dahl some credit, he also tried to make Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a black kid, but he was told by his publisher
that wouldn't sell.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think it's more egregious to hear about that than to hear about the Dr. Seuss situation, because I feel like the Dr. Seuss situation is just a business making a decision, and if
about their own product, their own thing. Two things that we chatted about this before. First of all, you hear people saying, "Well, they're canceling Dr. Seuss," which is an inaccurate statement. They're not canceling all of Dr. Seuss. And secondly, I would really be interested in having a conversation with someone who's really outraged by their canceling and all the cancel culture, who is in a demographic group that has ever been marginalized. Because I'm going to bet you that most of the people that are ranting and raving about that are not in any group that's ever been marginalized. So they have no sensitivity to what that's like.
No, I agree with you. I think it's also because I feel like I feel a little disappointed when I saw a lot of people who said Black Lives Matter last year with George Floyd and all that, and now like they it seemed like they had this awakening, right? And then now with things changing, I think that we're getting to a point where we're kind of losing our awakening from the George Floyd situation, which is sad because I feel
it's because it's faded a little bit in the news.
Yeah,
that's why. Yeah,
and also the end of Black History Month, I noticed that a lot of my friends who were very supportive during that time, and they were part of these demographics that weren't directly affected by it. They were talking about how, well, I can look up a picture of a Chinese person eating chopsticks. Is that offensive? And I said, well, no, because there's a different context. Like if a Chinese person took a picture of another Chinese person eating chopsticks, there's a humanity there. Dr. Seuss didn't write that. He didn't write that Chinese character with the idea of creating a person. He wrote it.
No, it was a caricature. It was a cartoon. It was a over the top stereotype. Yeah.
It was for a rhyme.
Yeah.
And he used that image for a rhyme. And I was telling that person that, hey, the thing about racism and things like that is that it's not always like so obvious. It could be insidious.
Sometimes it's subtle. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the thing about it is that, like, you might say, well, the monkey in the African attire, like, maybe that monkey's from Africa. Well, it's like, but there's also, like, context about, like, how black people were called monkeys. And there's also, like...
Yeah, that's not...
No, I definitely...
Gonna fly, yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. I was going to say that, just in general, that people, I think we need to have conversations about why these images speak to certain demographics more than others. But I also want to tell people, look, if you disagree with us and you want to see these books, and I want to ask you, like, have you read these books lately?
I think most of them haven't. Yeah.
And I also want to also encourage people that I agree with the idea of having these books in universities for teaching children, and having these books there so that way we can look at them and say, like, and
have that conversation about why is this offensive? Why is it? Yeah.
And also the idea is to also talk about how publishers have every right to get rid of books.
Absolutely.
And the fact is that we could also compare, like, that depiction of a Chinese person and tell someone, hey, why don't we grab this children's book by a Chinese author about their experience and compare the two and talk about it. And the other thing is that I think that the Dr. Seuss estate, I think they just really want to do right by the public today. And I think they just want to make Dr. Seuss more accessible, because in my opinion, I think Dr. Seuss is one of those authors that really knows how to get to kids to read.
Right. He had a way of connecting with kids with this sort of childlike mentality, which was great.
And one of my favorite ones, and I actually have a bunch of children's books at my house that I sometimes take a look at for my class, because I have a class on children's literature. And I looked at The Cat in the Hat, and I was sitting there like, you know what, this is really great. It doesn't have it does not have any problematic elements. It's sweet, and I feel like it's very nuanced in how it talks about discipline. And I was telling myself, you know what? Like, I think people are focusing too much on preserving something that isn't worth preserving anymore. And it's those 6 books, and Cat in the Hat is still there, and
there's plenty of Dr. Seuss still out there. And the other thing is, it's once again, it's these people that are ranting and raving. They saw this on the media or on Facebook, and if no one had told them that some of these books, they wouldn't know, and it wouldn't affect their lives one iota. It doesn't affect them. They're just something to rant and rave about.
I agree with you on that, because I feel like because when we were talking before the air, I said, Stephen King did this, right?
Mm-hmm. But he was quiet about it. So I think that the Dr. Seuss estate, if they just stopped releasing those books, I think no one would have said anything. Would really have noticed. Yeah.
But I think they wanted to send out a message about rebranding,
and they could. I just want to say something about this, and it's something that's so a part of. I mean, it's been part of the pandemic and everything. Is people? It's really disappointing when people cannot put themselves in other people's shoes, have no empathy, and all they can see is how it affects me, how it affects my life, and I don't. Since it's not offensive to me, it doesn't bother me. It's not affecting my life or my paycheck. I don't care, and that's really disturbing to me. And it's like, really part of becoming a mature adult and spiritual involvement is understanding what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes and imagining their pain.
I agree with that, and also I kind of feel like I like to call it the opposite, outrage culture, where someone thinks that a bunch of people are sensitive about a topic, when in reality it's like, no, they just want to have a conversation about it. Like, for example, the Potato Head situation. To briefly touch upon that, it's kind of similar to Dr. Seuss, where...
It sounds so funny, though, the Potato Head situation. Okay, go ahead.
Like, the Dr. Seuss and Potato Head situation share one thing, where a company wants to rebrand themselves, and everyone's taking it a little... And the people are getting a little too weirded out by it. And it's like, the Potato Head thing, it's more of like, they just want... what it really is that they want you to have more options with the toy.
Wasn't there a Mrs. Potato Head too, though?
No, yeah.
So, okay, I'm not sure what the problem is there. I mean, one's Mr., one Mrs. That, to me, that seems sillier. I mean, the Dr. Seuss thing, I think, has more depth to it, that decision.
No, yeah. The Potato Head thing, though, I would say it's just a cynical move to rebrand it, honestly. Yeah. Like, that's the thing about it, is that it's kind of like if you got a PlayStation 5 and instead of calling it PlayStation 5, you say PlayStation Ultra. Yeah. That's what it is with Potato Head. It's still kind of
the same thing. It's just, has a different name.
And with Potato Head, they decided, you know what, we're just going to give you more accessories. And I think that a lot of people took those two situations, the Potato Head and the Dr. Seuss situation, into areas where they don't belong. Like Dr. Seuss, people have this big idea of Dr. Seuss being taken out of the literary canon for children. Not true.
Not true.
And Potato Head, people think it's cancel culture, when in reality it's just a company wanting to sell you more toys.
Hello. Yeah. I mean, really, just take a deep breath, calm down, go find something more important to get upset about.
I agree. And also, just remember, always look towards reading neutral sources on stories like this, because opinion pieces can sometimes create a image that isn't there. Absolutely. And an enemy that you're not actually facing. So remember, no one's trying to take away Dr. Seuss.
Don't create false enemies when they're not there. Yeah.
And remember that. And we'll see you for the next segment.
Okay. All right.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallen and Brian Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Here are Bonnie and Brian.
Hey, welcome back to The Culture Corner. Let's get an update on the Lady Gaga situation.
Yes, yay.
So last week we talked about how the Lady Gaga situation was that her dogs were kidnapped, and it was awful, and the dog walker was shot too. So now we actually have I'm going to say a pretty good solution for now. Not quite justice, but we're
on the way.
Mm-hmm. So the two dogs were eventually returned by a woman, and of course it was a no questions asked situation, and there is a I'm going to say allegedly just because you never know. I'm not entirely sure, but I think she had no connection to the...
I'm just wondering how she got them, if they were just wandering the street, or how she got them. And so I guess she got the $500,000 or whatever it is that Lady Gaga was offering.
I think she did. I think she did get it, and because Lady Gaga said she was very emotionally grateful for the situation. And the other thing is that the dog walker Fisher, that's his last name, Fisher, he said that he is recovering. He's doing much better now, and that he feels that Lady Gaga's fans and the public have really motivated him to keep going, because it was a very frightening ordeal.
Yeah.
Funny enough, not funny enough, but like ironically enough, after our segment, an hour later, I actually saw footage of the incident where he was holding one of the dogs and was shaking and was very protective of them. And it's like, that's someone that really will go out far for you,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I mean, not to be cynical, but I'm hoping that this woman was innocent, but you have to wonder if maybe she knew this guy and there was and they says, "Oh, hey, we'll split I'll take the dogs back and we'll split the $500,000." You know what I mean? I'm hoping that she wasn't involved at all.
I would like to believe she wasn't. I think that the LA police department will probably figure out something. And the fact is that somebody got shot. So
that's a attempted murder or assault or some kind of charge. Yeah.
That's a pretty serious charge to begin with. And I think that outside of the dogs being kidnapped, I think the LA Police Department is looking into it as an actual assault or murder.
Attempted murder should be, yeah.
And the fact is that it's a saga that so far has calmed down a bit, but I still feel bad for him because it's like...
Oh, he's just doing his job, walking dogs. So clearly he's a dog lover and just doing his job for a celebrity, and boom. I mean, it's awful.
And the thing would be that I think it'd be very important for us during this time to keep an extra eye out for our animals, because the fact is that if a celebrity's dog gets kidnapped, it's a lot easier for us to get our dogs kidnapped.
Non-celebrities, yeah, and that happens. Yeah, I've heard of people, their little dog was like just kidnapped out of their backyard and stuff like that. Plus, then you also have to worry about coyotes too, in California in certain areas. Yeah,
I would say be very careful with your dogs, and also just in general, like. It's one of those things where I can't imagine taking someone else's dog, because it just seems like a very cynical thing to do, because I sometimes wonder, like, why did they steal those dogs to begin with? Because it seems like they didn't even get much out of them. Because, like, if they were planning on selling them themselves, then they didn't really get much out of it. And I know that in some places, like, they'll buy dogs, unfortunately, as bait for other animals, which is why I will encourage people, always charge money when you give away a dog. Like charge $30 or something, because it discourages people from that. So there are so many. It's one of those things where, like, I think, sadly, we are in I don't want to say a society, but I think we live in a time where people. I'm happy we live in a time where people see their dogs as children,
part of the family.
Part of the family. So to end it on a positive note, I think that I'm very happy to see someone like Lady Gaga get their dogs back, and somebody like her who's always been so encouraging to people to see her as sort of like a member of the family too. And also, she's just an overall nice person to me.
She's donated a lot of money. She donated a lot of money for the COVID relief, for disasters and hurricanes. I mean, she's been very socially active, always, and very philanthropic, and very inclusive. You can see very inclusive in every group, and so I'm really happy to see that this has had a happy ending. She got him back. The dogs are okay. The dog walkers, I think, going to be okay. But it's a wake up call. Very scary. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it just kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. Like it just. I remember I was watching the TV when that came on, and I was shocked. I was like, "Wait a minute! Lady Gaga's dogs were kidnapped." And I feel like at first, like when we were in the house, my family and I were in the house, we were like, "Oh, that's random," but let's move on from that a little bit. But then when the story got to where the guy was shot and all that, and then it kind of hit me like, well, her dogs got kidnapped too. Like it sort of struck me as that's bad too. I think it's a double whammy of bad. But my heart goes out to the dog walker. I really hope that he gets justice for what happened, and that he actually is able to just get back to work. You know, get back to work, get back to living his life. And I really hope that Lady Gaga is helping him out. I'm sure she is.
I have no doubt. I'm sure she is, because he did everything he could to keep her dogs safe. So, well, God bless Lady Gaga and her dogs and the walker. I hope you're okay. And keep a good watch on your animals, guys. Everybody, because it's crazies out there.
And coming up next, we're going to talk to Christopher Dew about his music video release. So stay tuned.
The curtain rises on local and regional arts and entertainment. From music to theater, films to fine art, it's the Culture Corner. Get connected. Call 760-544-TALK. That's 760-544-8255. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And we're back on the Culture Corner, and Brian's trying to reach Christopher Dew right now. We're going to get him on the phone shortly. In the meantime, I wanted to just give a shout out to a couple people. I had to buy a new computer. I have an 8-year-old laptop, and the internal mic died, and I need the mic to coach voiceover students. And so my tech guy from my company said, you know what, you really need to get a new computer. So I went to Best Buy and got a beautiful desktop HP Envy, it's gorgeous, and paid the extra money to have them transfer all of my files, hopefully, I thought, from the old one to the new one. Well, the problem is there were a couple things that didn't get transferred, and none of the shortcuts got transferred. The icons that are at the bottom of the screen, you just click it and it brings up all these different things, my session notes, my scripts for my students, all of that, which made it really difficult, if not impossible, to carry on my sessions with my voiceover students. So I was kind of tearing my hair out and getting really stressed out about this tech stuff, which I do at times. And so I put the word out, sent some messages to a couple of people. Hey, do you know anybody that can come to my house and fix my computer and do tech stuff? You know, I'll pay them. And Jeff Hawker, who has a show here on iHub Radio, who's a dear buddy, said, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. And he referred me to this gentleman, Sam Moore, who's wonderful. Came to my house yesterday, fixed everything, transferred everything. So now all of my stuff, all my emails are set up, all my shortcuts, everything's on my new beautiful desktop exactly the way it was on my laptop. So now I can function and do all my classes. So thank you, Jeff Hawker, and thank you, Sam Moore, for rescuing me. And anybody needs tech help, private message me or email me, and I will, bonniegnews@gmail.com, and I will pass on the info on this guy. But thank you, saved my mental health and my life. Let's see. What else we're gonna talk about here? We're going to get into Martha Stewart. You know, I did not realize that Martha Stewart had never hosted Saturday Night Live, and I'm sure she was offered it several times, and apparently she never did, which I'm not quite sure why, and apparently now she's regretting that. So, she's had Martha Stewart's got to be, she's got to be late 70s? I don't know how old she is, and she's sort of had a, revival of her career with all that stuff she did with Snoop Dogg, and then the special shows and the cooking segments and the commercials, and of course she went to jail for insider trading, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of people that have done worse things, and even some of them I think are even in elected office, as I recall, who have not gone to jail for that kind of thing. So I think Martha Stewart sort of deserve redemption at this point. She went to jail for insider trading, and she paid her dues. So don't talk about the pandemic. Things are loosening up a little bit slowly, and if we're smart, we're going to keep it slow and listen to the scientists, listen to the medical people. I know that now there's outdoor dining at restaurants. Some places are having outdoor music with limited seating, spaced out, masks. The performers a great distance away from the tables, which I think is really important. People are getting vaccinated, which is great. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm not in an eligible category yet for the vaccine, myself or my partner Eric. Really looking forward to when we are, because I'm going to get it ASAP. I have no hesitation. And everyone I know that's gotten, and most of the people I know have gotten the shot, have either had no side effects at all, not even a sore arm, nothing. And the couple people that have had maybe had a sore arm or flu-like symptoms for 24 hours, and then they've been fine. We got Christopher.
Hey, we got Christopher on the phone. We got some technical issues, but we got Christopher Doe on the phone finally for those of you listening. Hey, Christopher, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing good, Christopher. I wanted to ask you, so what's going on with this music video? For those of you who don't know, Christopher Doe is going to be releasing a music video on YouTube. And also, where else are you releasing the music video at?
So YouTube is pretty much going to be the main place I'm going to be releasing it. However, there is an event page on Facebook as well. If you go onto my artist Facebook or my personal Facebook, there is a link to the event, or you can just search up the event. You could probably look up like Christopher Doe music video release or something in the events, and it'll pop up for sure.
And I wanted to ask you, so I was going to say that I'm really impressed by the fact that not only you're the musician, but you're also a director. You're also directing this. Tell me about that experience of not only being a musician, but also having to direct yourself and other people. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because just the other day I was talking to one of my friends about trying to disassociate yourself from a project in order to like maximize the optimal the optimal way you can do it if you're involved in the project as well. And I think one of the most challenging things about sort of directing something that you've already created, if that makes sense, is the disassociation, and it is I guess having the chance to be able to like make a vision come alive, but at the same time, when I was directing and when I was working with my videographer and my editor, Kurt Shawwalker, who's an amazing guy, every time I emailed him some notes, I said, singer needs to do this, or cut the singer out here, or cut, or the pianist, which was me. I was both the pianist and the singer on the stage and all that stuff. It's going to be awesome. But, I had to make sure I looked at it as if I wasn't looking at myself. So that was definitely like a cool experience for sure.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, because the fact is that when it comes to being a director, I think it's one of those things where sometimes it's a whole different set of hats and roles that you have to put on. And I think you're I always thought of you as someone who wants to be very creative in the entire space. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be creative and have a lot of control, but I also see you as someone who's very generous with that. Now, I've also wanted to say, like, for you, why does this song in particular get a music video? I know that a lot of us, we have several singles. Everyone who's an artist has several singles, but I always wonder the process of picking one for the music video.
That's an interesting question. I'm not going to lie, there are some business aspects behind it, and there are some creative aspects behind it. It's a little bit of a 50-50. I've been just working behind the scenes with my manager on a couple of things, which I can't really talk about on air yet, or anywhere really. But all I can say is that there have been some pretty some interested parties very interested in the song that I had showed them. And, then my manager was like, hey, Chris, you want to make a music video to this? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, we can do this. And so that was kind of like, that was pretty much the driving force behind the decision of making the music video. But then, of course, besides the business aspect, I was like, okay, what does this song remind me of the way it's produced? And I instantly thought of like this sort of 80s classic rock sort of vibe, which I can't wait for you to share with you guys. The single itself hasn't been released yet at all. So this will be kind of the debut of the video and the single. So, I was just kind of, it's a ballad, it's a rock ballad. So, it'll start off with the piano, and then it'll sort of turn into this sort of rockish, like, really cool, like, feel. I don't know how to explain it, but the song meant a lot to me when I wrote it. I wrote it about 2 years ago, and I just was just like, you know what, we can work with this.
Christopher, hey, this is Bonnie. Question for you: How many folks are in your? So the video is you and several musicians. How many people are actually in the video?
Yes, so there's a total of 4 people in the video. There's myself on piano, and I'm also going to be doing some stuff on the stage. There is my guitarist. He goes by Razor J. And then my bassist, Miguel Arballo, and my drummer, Sean McCune. Now, that being said, I definitely do want to, if I can, I want to reiterate for the record that we were all completely COVID safe about it, to the point where we had the limitation of recording each individual by themselves on stage. So we essentially did like a live feel, but we did it with individual shots, and that was a limitation that we had to actually focus on rather than just look at it as a limitation. So like pretty much we have shots of every single band member doing their thing, you know, and at all times when we were on a stage, which by the way, we actually built an entire stage in our backyard to do this, but you know, because COVID and studios were closed and stuff. But you know, so we did that just for the sake of, you know, kind of making a statement as well. You know, being like, hey, like, be safe, and you know, you can still do art while, you know, not being dumb.
Good for you. Yeah, it's great.
No, I really got to say that's really cool that you actually decided to keep the COVID restrictions around, because I think that with COVID, I think a lot of people see it, like when it comes to being an artist, as a hindrance, when it could be something that you can adapt and change. And I think in many ways, filming these people individually led to a lot of creative decisions. And I think that that's actually a really cool thing about, I think that's one positive thing we can look at in terms of like adversity, is to adapt. But I also wanted to ask you specifically, do you mind telling us a little bit more about like the influences behind your music video? I know you have a lot of influences in your music. Did you have any particular influences as a director of your music video? Like, there's plenty of great music videos out there. Was there any in particular that you had?
Oh gosh, God, all these great questions, and I love them. I gotta say, man, I'm you know, I gotta be perfectly honest. Sometimes I like going into projects sort of kind of blind, in the sense that, like, not blind as in like I have absolutely no knowledge of what I'm doing, but I mean like sometimes I don't like to think about influences. And sometimes, I mean, I did, obviously, like you can't avoid it when you're working on projects, but like I didn't really want to recreate anything per se, anything that I've seen before. But there was a particular shot, and it's in the very beginning, where I did just what I wanted to do was create this arc of beginning, middle, and end, sort of like writing a story, as I think one should when creating anything sort of artistic. But in the beginning of the video, there's just a shot of me it's actually a shot of the keys of a piano, and then all you see is just, you know, the title card of, you know, my song, and then you see my hands play the keys, and then the song starts, and then the camera work happens, and it slowly pans around, and then the camera work slowly builds and builds and builds, and then at the end of the video, it sort of ends exactly the same as it started, and then it fades away. And I wanted to write a story like that, because I wanted to take more of a narrative approach versus a sort of just, oh, let's just make a cool music video, you know, because it's cool. I don't like that concept. I'd rather just actually make something really cool out there. Not cool, but really, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a little deeper than that.
It sounds very, very cinematic. Yeah, I love that. I like that idea.
Now, Christopher, one final question before we have to head out. Unfortunately, we do have to head out, but
no worries.
The question is, where do we go from here with this music video? What is your goal with it? Where are we going with it?
My goal is to get some of the most important people in the music industry to see it. That's really my goal. I'm not pulling any punches about my music anymore. You know, I'm in my 20s, and I've made the decision a long time ago to be a performer, a musician, and an artist. Like, art is my life. And pretty much with this, I'm sort of going to try taking it to the moon and just trying to get noticed and seen. So
good for you. Congratulations. That's great.
I'm really excited, Christopher. Now, it's going to be this Sunday at what time again? Just real quick.
This Sunday, it's going to debut on Facebook and Twitch and YouTube, everywhere, 7 p.m. This Sunday. Look out for my social media links and the like.
Okay, perfect. And again, it's Christopher Do with a K and D-O. Okay, so let's we're going to head out and move on to a new segment.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right, we'll be back.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallen and Brian Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Live from the desert cities of Southern California, here's Brian and Bonnie.
To close out this particular episode of the show, we talked about cancel culture a little bit earlier, and I think that there's this big misunderstanding about critique versus canceling. I want to make it clear, in my opinion, that I don't think I have the power to cancel anything that's produced by a corporation. And I think a corporation will have every right to do what they want with the product. Not necessarily people, but that's a different thing, you know. Like, the fact is that Disney is a company that's very protective over their image. And so I say all this because I wanted to talk about Disney Plus making some changes, including adding a disclaimer to The Muppet Show, and moving some movies from the kids profile to the adult profile.
What's the disclaimer on the Muppet Show? What are they going to say?
The disclaimer is basically like the following program may include like offensive or outdated stereotypes, and on certain episodes, not every episode. And they also have done this where they've put it on Dumbo, Peter Pan, the Aristocats, a few movies from their past. And so they add this disclaimer as sort of like a, hey, you know, if you see something that may potentially be offensive, here it is. I always thought of it as sort of like a Disney's clearing themselves from any criticism sort of thing, which
well, I'm sure there's an aspect of that in there. Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where like they're trying to I think be sensitive to some of the criticisms, but I think people have this idea of that we can't critique something and talk about how we can improve upon it. I think that for me, it's important to look at something like Peter Pan and see how it depicts Native Americans and say, how can we do better than that? And I think that when we have that conversation, we create a better understanding of our society and cinema and stuff like that. And for me, here's a question I want to ask. If you don't want to have that conversation, are you sure the movie's worth anything if you were not willing to? Is that movie worth a conversation? And it is. It's a great movie. Peter Pan, I mean, personally, I think Peter Pan's one of the good rather than great Disney movies, but like Dumbo's a great movie. And I think it's really important to have the conversation regarding its depiction of the crows. And is it race, or is it is it problematic? Is it racist? And it's about those conversations. And so for Disney Plus, the app, they have moved those 3 movies over to the adult profile, meaning that if you are a parent, you can set up an adult profile, which there's no adult content to begin with on Disney Plus. So but it's your choice as a parent as to whether or not you want your kid to have access to it, and then maybe have that conversation. Definitely. I agree with that. I think that that's actually the best way to put it, is you as the parent have a decision to make about whether or not those films, I think there's no disputing those films are great, and they are easy for kids to watch. Like, they'll watch it and they probably won't pick up on the stereotypes, but I think it's also important to kind of see it as a teachable moment and say like, hey,
absolutely,
hey, what's going on here? And I think that with the Muppet Show, they added a disclaimer, because the Muppet Show, I know I said earlier that there's no adult content on Disney Plus, but the Muppet Show has always been a show that's predominantly more appealing to adults than kids. Like, I think as an adult, I think an adult would appreciate Rita Moreno's appearance on the Muppet Show.
Of course, yeah.
more than a kid. And not to say a kid probably won't know who she is. I'm sure there's kids out there that do. Yeah. But I think that, for example, I would get more excited about Rita Moreno on the first episode than like my niece or nephew who are like, oh, that's just the lady who sings.
That lady, yeah.
That lady who sings in the middle of these puppets that I want to watch instead. Yeah. and I think that when you create these conversations, you let people in to begin with. Like, you let minorities or people of color, women come in and say like, you know what, is this how we should depict people now? And of course, I think it's important to have that balance of having a good time watching these shows and also understanding
A little education along the way.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And for me, I also think it's important to but I'm gonna be honest, like I do think it's important for Disney Plus to be pretty honest about certain things, because like they had a cartoon called Santa's Workshop, and they had the disclaimer on there, right? And I was under the impression that it was going to be the uncut version, where unfortunately the little it was just in this scene. In the uncut version, Santa Claus inspects some dolls. There's a white doll with blonde hair and blue eyes. And then the black doll comes on, and the black doll says "mammy" instead of "mommy." It says "mammy."
Oh, dear.
And it has like the really stereotypical hair. And I was under the impression that, okay, well, they've kept it on there, and I get it. Like, I get why they kept it on there. The Warner Brothers company, they keep their cartoons. They also put a disclaimer on their cartoons, and I actually respect how Warner Bros. does it because they've been doing it for a while, and I think they know how to educate the public on their cartoons. They have TCM and all that, but with Disney, I think they've always had this idea of like stumbling on themselves, because they put that disclaimer, but that scene with the black doll is nowhere near on the Disney Plus version. So I'm kind of asking Disney, be thoughtful about where you put that disclaimer, because you just can't. Because if you put it on Santa's Workshop, someone may watch and say, wait, I don't get it, without knowing that the reason why you put it there was for that thing.
Right.
And also TCM is also doing a week-long program called Problematic Films, where they look at movies like Breakfast at Tiffany's, Gone with the Wind, and they look at those movies and critique what would
the
be
social issues and what was acceptable maybe then and isn't now. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
And it's a festival in that sense. Like, it's just, you watch it and they talk about it. I think the movies they pick, like Breakfast at Tiffany's, I love Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, I do too.
But it's kind of one of those things where I forget conveniently that Mickey Rooney does what he does in that movie.
Wait, Mickey Rooney's not in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, no, yeah, he is. He's the Asian character. The Asian
That's right. Oh my God.
See, that's exactly my point, is that we forget that he's in it.
Got that. Oh my gosh.
He played the Asian stereotype in that film, and when you watch it, it's one of those things where I don't think it's a bad thing that people forget about it. It's just, it's not inherently bad. It's just one of those things when you revisit Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah. See, I totally forgot that. And I love that movie. Yeah. It's a great movie. And I just want to say something real quick. I think that it's a good idea for parents to take a film like Peter Pan or whatever it is, and depending on the age of your child. I mean, you have to make it sense how old they are. They can understand. But take those teachable moments, because I just was thinking of the song from South Pacific. You've got to be carefully taught. Children are taught to be racist or not, to be prejudiced or not. They're not born that way. No baby is born racist. They learn that from parents and siblings and people around them. So I think that's really important.
No, I agree with that. Carefully taught, and also just, if your child has questions about certain things, or like, let's say they watch the Peter Pan and they hear the Red Man song, ask yourselves why your kids really invest in that song, and teach them a bit, and actually tell them, hey, it's about this culture. And I think it's also important for schools to also bring about that sort of conversation too.
Yep.
And using those movies as an example of harm is a good thing. And it's also important just to have fun with those movies too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Good conversation. We'll be back with more in the Culture Corner. And next segment, we're going to talk with Sandra Booker, a wonderful jazz singer who's got a new single out in just a bit.